When I had my experience in 1992, there was definitely something about the whole event that seemed personal. My experience with a black silent triangle was preceded by a voice in my head that simply said, "Watch the skies." I too had the thing hover right over my head for what seemed like a full minute, and I had the impression it was trying to communicate with me. Only I never heard any voices after the initial "watch the skies." It was as if it wanted for me to get a real good look, and that the event itself was all that needed to be said. With most of the people I've related this story to over the years in casual conversations, I always leave this part out. I'm extremely sensitive to social cues, such as eye-rolling, topic changes, and snide remarks, which gradually led me to just leave the telepathy part out entirely. Good to get positive confirmation after all these years. I don't mind skeptics. I totally get them. Debunkers, however, make me wonder how anyone could live their entire lives being so obtuse and cynical that they would rather call the whole world liars than to accept their experiences at face value. I honestly consider these people my sworn spiritual enemies. There's something tragically wrong with them. They make my skin crawl.
Trouble in Paradise podcast is intended for mature audiences. This means you will hear realistic adult language such as and go off. Audience discretion is advised.
What is knob polishing?
You're gonna make me say this. I am a neglected man.
I like to think that I look like a jack, even though my name's really Bob.
Does he have danglers or something?
Well, it's time to go do them lighthouse duties.
Sitting in the cheese at the old Walmart to cool off.
That should be the headline. Man tasered in the nuts after stealing beef.
Yeah, but you're not gonna sit in the cheese. You're not gonna sit in the cheese, and you're not gonna put ribeyes down your pants either.
House cleaning is secondary. So what is the Viagra triangle?
Possibly we aid in your digestion.
I don't know if his little hand is smaller than his little ears or what.
Aw, well maybe he has a syndrome.
Want to go check out my RV? It's parked right around the corner. Because I'm pretty sure that I saw some moose knuckle.
No.
There is absolutely some moose knuckle going on.
My swampy friend. What the hell is a swampy friend?
I know. So they're not going to get any scraping on their shaft.
Yes, I'm going to do a downward dog.
Okay, pretty lady. You had on those gosh darn sexy leather looking shorts.
Ladies and gentlemen, and assholes, gather around. It's time for another action-packed episode of
Trouble in Paradise.
Hi, I'm Nigel Kent.
And I'm Jazmine Starr.
And welcome to Trouble in Paradise.
Our show is a free-thinking, open-minded podcast discussing conspiracy theories, the paranormal, true crimes against humanity, plus our favorite only in Florida stories. The content presented by Trouble in Paradise contains speculation and conjecture and is not intended as educational material or advice. It is therefore not misinformation and does adhere to YouTube's community guidelines.
It does. And of course, guidelines are meant to be broken. So we're going to do our very best this evening as we talk about the Phoenix Lights on episode 62 of Trouble in Paradise. But before we do so, is there anything that you'd like to share with us about the number 62? Just off the top of your numerological noggin, Jazmine Starr?
My numerological noggin?
Don't you have a numerological noggin?
Well, with numerology, you add the numbers together. So 62 is 8.
Okay, so 6 plus 2 equals 8. Mm-hmm. And what is 8 about?
8 is about infinity, the ability to move forward and look beyond what is presented in front of you.
Okay, well, that might be...
So that's actually interesting.
So 8, move forward, look beyond what's being presented. Mm-hmm. And of course, we encourage everybody to do their own research whenever we bring up this isn't even that controversial of a of a topic at face value, when you look at it historically, this thing is so well documented. The Phoenix Lights is the most prolific and well-documented mass UFO sighting of all time. I mean, of recorded history, anyway.
Right. But yet it's still censored like you wouldn't believe.
It is still censored, yes. And the last 2 times we've been bonked by the tube, it has been because of... Both episodes had one thing in common, and that was a discussion of possible extraterrestrial technology.
That's actually very accurate.
So that's why we have named this one E.T., the extra testicle, to make sure that YouTube does not confuse anything and accidentally bonk us again. So that quote that I read at the beginning of the bump in was from somebody who experienced the Phoenix Lights incident that preferred to remain anonymous when posting about it on a Reddit forum. And they talked about how that experience gave them a feeling of being ostracized or socially separated from people that they dealt with. Like, they witnessed this thing in the sky. They received what they thought was a telepathic message of kindness and hope, apparently.
Right. It's interesting you say that, too, because there's a lot of witnesses that, aside from the actual being awestruck by what they witnessed, that they actually feel a sense of peace. There wasn't fear that they necessarily felt about this whole incident. So it's quite compelling that something so massive like that would also create a sense of overall peace and calm.
So something or some things, there's some speculation that there were multiple massive craft or objects which have been described as groups of orbs in equidistant formations, V-shaped craft, metallic objects, high altitude, low altitude, 5 lights in each craft, 7 lights in each craft, as many as 9 lights in each craft. And all of this happened on March 13th, 1997.
Yep.
And I know there's often a lot of strangeness considered around the number 13, too, but the preponderance of evidence is that this is not what any official story says it was. And we're going to get into what some of those official stories were. But why don't we start with the source of quote-unquote reliable documentation and go right to the National UFO Reporting Center and see what they have on their official...
All right, let's do it.
At approximately 6:55 p.m. Pacific, on Thursday, March 13th, 1997, a young man in Henderson, Nevada, reportedly witnessed a V-shaped object with 6 large lights on its leading edge approach his position from the northwest and pass overhead. In his subsequent written report to the National UFO Reporting Center, he described it as appearing to be quite large, approximately the size of a Boeing 747, and that it generated a sound with which he equated to that of rushing wind. It continued on a straight line toward the southeast and disappeared from his view over the horizon. And one trend that I think that we're going to see here is that everything seemed to be moving from north to south,
Right.
or from northwest to southeast.
Yeah. I want to interject there where he described the size of the Boeing 747 because they actually did a comparison with what the other witnesses were describing and the size of the craft. A Boeing 747 has a length of 231 feet 10 inches and a wingspan of 211 feet 5 inches. The UFO is estimated at a length of 935 feet and a wingspan of 1,500 feet.
So he maybe was seeing something that was at a much higher altitude than he perhaps realized.
Right. Distance. Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me jump off the screen cap for a second. You know what we skipped, Jazmine Star?
How to get a hold of us?
We did. We skipped how to get a hold of Jazmine Starr and Trouble in Paradise.
To get a hold of us, you're right here on our YouTube channel, Trouble in Paradise. Hit that like and subscribe button.
Smash and like.
Smash it and join in on the live chat. Let us know that you're here. Instagram, we're on Trouble239. Twitter at Tipcast239. Email trouble@trouble239.com. Our Patreon is Trouble239, and we can be listened to on all major podcatchers, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it, we're about there.
And how do they get a hold of you if they want to send you some personal communication?
If you want personal communication with me, you can find me.
Uh-oh, here we go. She just turned French.
You can find me at Jazmine Starr, JAZMINESTARR 239 on Twitter, and star_light_readings on Instagram.
So, and I'm Nigel Kent. Hi, Nigel Kent 239 on Twitter, Nigel Kent on Telegram, and I think that's about it. Trouble@trouble239.com, as Jazmine said, if you'd like to email us. And by the way, emails are treated confidentially. If you don't want to be outed, we will not out you. But people have emailed us about certain cases that we've talked about, and we have honored their request for privacy, even when they didn't deserve to be kept private. Okay, moving on from that one, episode 30-something. Let's talk about... I won't do that to you. I just outed them, didn't I? It's probably...
That was a great case.
They narrowed it down to 10 whole episodes. That's pretty anonymous still, I think.
Oh, that was a great case.
It was a good case. It's not a good case, but an intriguing case for certain.
Well... Yeah, move on.
So the Phoenix, thank you. The Phoenix Lights sighting is perhaps the earliest of or this individual sighting, rather, of this V-shaped object by a young man in Henderson, Nevada, was the earliest of a complex series of events that would take place during the next 3 hours over the states of Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico, and which would quickly become known as the Phoenix Lights sightings. Now, I'm going to add a couple things to that. Most of the official news reporting on this, and by most, I mean like almost every story, says that the first report came from a retired police officer in Phoenix, not from this fella who was in Henderson, Nevada, approximately 20 minutes before the retired police officer report. Another thing that I'd like to point out, too, is that there is a tremendous amount of Mexican-sourced information about this event that has been suppressed in the mainstream media, particularly on Google.
Right. There in Mexican city of Sonora, thousands of people also witnessed this event.
Yeah, and what you have to understand here is this isn't your run-of-the-mill one or two people and maybe somebody got it on their cell phone. Literally, dozens of people videotaped it. Thousands, if not tens of thousands of people saw it and have eyewitness testimony. And, you know, there are a number of questionable people trying to take advantage of the event. And it's quite clear that they are. I'm not going to name names on that either, but there's a lot of people that you could tell back in the day when they were on, you know, Good Morning America and stuff like that, that they were kind of hamming things up a little bit for the sake of their own celebrity. So this mass sighting involved sightings in the tens and perhaps even hundreds of thousands of witnesses on the ground, and it gave rise to a storm of controversy over what had caused the event. Now, understand that most of the mainstream reporting on this did not happen for almost 3 months after the main event on March 13th. And so I'm going to pull up some video footage from 1997. You ready for this? Blast from the past over here, Jazmine Starr.
Yeah.
All right. Video footage from 1997 regarding the Phoenix Lights. Here we go.
It took about 12 to 15 minutes to come in our direction, and we could see then that it was a V-shaped formation, and also that the ends of this V-shaped formation were very square. And then we saw it as it went completely overhead. It was extremely close to us, and it, as it went right over us, the right wing went directly over us and our house, and my husband and I were standing right there together, and the kids were out there.
Tim, do you have a sense of how high it was?
Yeah, I would say that it was in the neighborhood of 150 or so feet over the house.
That close. And moving how fast?
35 miles an hour.
And making any noise?
Not a single sound. That's what, when it first started coming over, and it was so big, it was like 600 or 800 feet long, this one arm. The kids, when it was coming over and there was no sound, the kids started jumping up and down and thinking, hey, the Independence Day, No, really, we got scared for a second, but it just passed over absolutely silently without a sound. There wasn't even a whooshing sound from any noise whatsoever. And you could see the shape of it as it went across the stars. You could not see any light reflecting from it, although there were 5 lights set up inside of it.
And Hal, let me ask you, how did it disappear slowly, or did it just go away all at once?
Oh no, it stayed. It went through the mountain gap and continued. We watched it continue for about 5 or 6 more minutes as it went down over towards Phoenix.
Hal, what was your reaction to all this?
Well, I was really scared because this thing flying over your house when you get home, and it was so big because it covered up a couple of the blocks, and
Let me ask Damien, did it look threatening to you, Damien?
It looked a little big, like a big old triangle, because the first thing I thought it was a stealth bomber. Got a little freaky, but then when it went by us, nothing happened, so we started chasing after it like there was nothing wrong.
All right, Michael Gillen, your theory?
Oh, boy. Well, Charlie, maybe it was a flying saucer from another planet, as a lot of these folks believe. But maybe, and more likely, it was a military craft. What interested me is that the air controller said they didn't see it on the radar screen, even though they could see it with their eyes. So that reminded me of stealth. And then if you look at the stealth aircraft out there, you see that there is a very pronounced V shape to the wing shape of a stealth bomber.
So he's holding a plastic cardboard-looking cutout of a... So the argument here is that it's a V-shaped stealth aircraft because American stealth aircraft can travel that slowly and hover in place.
They can.
Yeah, but not without making a ton of noise. Have you been to an air show?
For a stealth bomber?
Oh yeah, they're jet powered. Extremely noisy. They don't show up on radar, but they're extremely loud.
Yeah. Well, all the reports of people who said that this craft over their rooftops have all said that it was completely silent.
Completely silent. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, I just because it's not the 90s anymore, we would be missing something if we didn't give some social commentary on this family at this point. And one thing I noticed about the Lay family, who apparently has a son with a different last name, Turnage, or maybe it's a blended family. I'm not going to judge that because it's only been 30 years, and I guess that's okay now, right? But the father and son, or father and stepson, appear to be wearing the exact same shirt, one with an open collar, one without. And then he's got that trademark 90s vest thing going on. Now, and the other thing I noticed, too, is that the mom doesn't budge the entire, I mean, this is what, a 2.5, 3 minute shoot here?
Yeah.
She doesn't budge from the camera. She doesn't even look at her husband, doesn't look at the kids, doesn't anything.
Right.
And I always, in the couple of times that I've viewed this, I always thought that was a little bit strange.
What are you thinking?
I don't have a theory about that. I'm not going to go any deeper on that because I really have nothing. But let's get back to this hired hand who is a professional debunker that works for ABC.
Out there, you see that there is a very pronounced V shape to the wing shape of a stealth bomber. If you look at this computer-generated representation of the thing that was seen, look at that. Look at the similarity. So it could be either this generation or a later generation of stealth that's being tested out that can hover. Bottom line is scientists are no longer investigating UFOs. I think that's a shame because this seems like a very intriguing situation. So what we're going to do...
So how much false things were just...
Oh, my gosh.
Come on, bring it.
Oh, my gosh.
Let's go, Jazmine.
1985 to 2004. Here we go. This was episode 51 that got bonked. But
You're just going to say the
I'm going to say...
Igalo Bay? Igalo Bay?
No, I'm going to talk about the doctor, Dr. Roger Lear, 1985 to 2004.
I think you can say his name. I just think it's Igalobe that you're not allowed to say. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
That worked in that building that had the rocks thrown at it during 9/11.
The building with the Cinco Sidos?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Cinco Sidos.
I don't speak,
I
don't speak the best French.
Oh my God. But no, come on. It's like you had the work of Dr. Roger Lear, where he was doing explantation surgeries and wrote this book, Aliens of the Scalpel, from 1985 to 2004.
And so this guy has the balls in 1997 to say that scientists aren't studying this stuff anymore.
Right,
What?
exactly.
What?
No, it was actually in the hands of the U.S. government, and they were being sent these samples to New Mexico to be studied under electron microscopy, and they found carbon nanotubes.
So if this guy, you just said another keyword. She's determined to nuke the podcast here now.
Well, no, you just said misinformation, and I'm calling this misinformation right now.
Well, your nickname is Misinformation.
Exactly.
But this guy, this hired hand by ABC, this good-looking young PhD, he really doesn't know what he's talking about, is what it boils down to. Back in 1997, he said scientists aren't studying UFOs anymore, and it's a shame. What?
They've always been studying them, and they've always been looking at technology, and it still continues on today, and that's just fact.
Okay, let's see what else this expert has to say regarding the Phoenix Lights.
We're going to do the next best thing. We're going to take all the videotapes that were shown, that were taken by all the folks who saw this thing, and we're going to have them analyzed by a scientific lab, and we're coming back later this summer to show our viewers what we found. So at least we can find something about the truth.
Michael, I understand the stealth analogy, and yes, it could be a later generation of that being tested by the Air Force, but it was moving so slowly and no noise.
Yeah, but the problem...
See, I love the benefit of hindsight, because now he's saying this is 25 odd years ago, or about 25 years ago. Good Morning America or ABC News is basically saying that, this is probably the next generation of stealth fighter, like with literally nothing to lean on other than the fact that here we are 25 years later and there's no such thing still.
Is that when you say it didn't make any noise and was moving slowly, presumes you really know what the distance and the size was, and that's a real tricky thing to do. The bottom line is the image of a quarter held at arm's length is exactly the same size as the image of the moon 250,000 miles away. How do you tell the difference? So even though these folks swear that it was 130 miles or that it went 35 miles an hour, try as you will, the human brain and the human senses are just not equipped to be that reliable. That's
okay.
That's actually a fair thing to say if you have no reference on the perception of depth, which most humans can't actually prove that the moon is 250,000 miles away.
Right. And one of the things in like the paranormal field that they talk about with something like this is a term called pareidolia, which is where your brain will kind of essentially fill in the blanks in whatever you're seeing.
Pareidolia?
Pareidolia.
I thought pareidolia was how you pronounced paranoia when you had a head cold.
No.
I'm with you, though.
No, it is... thank you for getting me completely off track here.
Yeah, paranormal investigations, pareidoia.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Go.
It's where your brain essentially is filling in the blanks of what you're seeing. So it's the reason why you can look at a partial object and
kind of complete the object in your mind's eye.
Right, where you'll see like people take pictures of tree branches and everything, and they're like, "Do you see the faces in the tree branches?"
Okay, that's pareidoia.
Yeah,
right.
Pareidolia.
There used to be a towel that would hang on the back of my bedroom door at night.
Yeah,
and it would scare the shit out of me because I believed that I could see a face in is that pareidoia?
Pareidolia, yeah.
Pareidolia. How's that spelled?
Oh boy, I have to look it up every time.
Well, is that maybe why people think that they see a man's face in the moon?
Yeah, probably.
But then it would have to be a hysterical kind of mass thing, like a cultural phenomenon.
Well, in something like this is clearly not a case of that. I mean, you can't you can't have that many eyewitnesses and say that.
Although, to be fair, there are so many varying accounts of what people actually saw. The people in the city saw this massive thing that was between 200 yards and 2 miles wide that had, most people agree, 7 lights or orbs that blocked out the stars, which meant that there was some sort of either distortion of the field of view or an actual solid object in the sky. There's that version of it. And then there's other versions of it where the orbs don't have any craft attached. They're just in sync with each other.
Right.
So how do you account for the how did you say it? How do you account for the perceptual differences between these various sightings? Is it because they were all on the same event or the same group? Do you think there were multiple craft, possibly? Or is something in the brain going on that causes people to see things differently?
It could be either or. I mean, let's go Star Wars here.
Okay.
All right.
Which episode are we talking about here?
Well, I mean, think about the Death Star, and then when all of the
Welcome PF3.
I know. I was gonna say thanks and to the misinformation with Precious Frito here joining in on the live chat.
All right, Precious Frito. Follow him on Twitter.
Let's get back on track here, though. With
yes, well, we were talking about varying perceptions of the same perceived. It's documented as the same event, but yet there's so many different ideas or perceived recollections of what actually happened.
Right. Well,
although to be fair, everything that was on videotape looks exactly the same.
It's like playing the game of telephone, essentially, or the perception that people have of what actually happened in 9/11.
Okay.
Some people say that they saw a plane go into a building, and other people say that they didn't see a plane hit a building.
Well, there's quite a few people who swear up and down that they never saw any planes, and a lot of those people met a rapid demise. I mean, there's quite a few people who claimed things about 9/11 that were counter to what was being reported, and those people, many of them, disappeared.
Yeah. They haven't found our super secret location here yet, though.
Yeah, super secret. Southwest Florida. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to continue with the official narrative from the National UFO Reporting Center. The next reported sighting was from a former police officer in Paulden, Arizona. Now, according to the media and most official stories about this sighting, this is the first person who ever saw it. Mm-hmm. So my take on this is that if the official story says that the second person that the National UFO Reporting Center says saw it is the first person who saw it, then there were probably dozens, if not hundreds of others who actually saw it before he did.
Right. Well, the U.S. Air Force is being inundated. Both bases were being inundated with phone calls.
Are you talking about Luke Air Force Base, the closest to Phoenix?
Luke and Barry Goldwater Range. And
isn't Goldwater the guy that ran against Nixon in the primary and lost? Yes.
Yeah. But both of them were receiving multiple calls on this. So
this former police officer in Paulden, Arizona, said that he had just left his home at 8:15 Mountain. So that was 20 minutes after the very first sighting, according to the UFO Reporting Center. He was driving north when he looked out the driver's window of his car to the west and witnessed a cluster of 5 reddish or orange lights. The formation consisted of 4 lights together, with a 5th light seemingly trailing the other 4. And that's a common report here is where you have like a leading edge that looks like a delta symbol or a triangle with a very, very long bottom. Mm-hmm. And then way behind it, almost like a kite shape, there's this one light way at the back. And there's actually several reports of that. I'm going to pull up one of the pictures of the formation, which was actually taken a little bit later on. And I can't find the run that I want to see here. Well, I'll pull that up in a minute or two. Don't follow PF3 on Twitter. Don't do it. But you can definitely follow Nigel Kent 239 on Twitter. We'll take all the action we can get. PF3, we hope everything is awesome with you and your family. And if there's any more birthday celebrations, let us know so we can do a special tribute for you. Getting back to the police officer, he said each of the individual lights in the formation appeared to him to consist of two separate points sources of orange light. Mm-hmm. In other words, there was a blur on each of them or a double of each of them, which is actually apparent in one of the Lynn Kitai photographs that we're going to show in a minute. The witness, this former police officer in Paulden, Arizona, immediately returned to his home, obtained a pair of binoculars, and watched as the lights disappeared over the horizon to the south. Now, he watched the lights for an estimated 2 minutes and reported that they made no sound that he could discern from his vantage point on the ground. Within a matter of minutes of these first sightings, a, quote, blitz of telephoned reports began pouring into the National UFO Reporting Center, to other UFO organizations, to law enforcement offices, and to news media offices, and to Luke Air Force Base. Now, if I were to actually rearrange that sentence in the order in which I suspect most of the calls were placed, I would think that law enforcement would probably be at the top.
Right.
And the National UFO Reporting Center would probably be at the bottom, because I don't think people think. They just want to know what the hell's going on and can I be protected from it.
Right.
You know? These reports were submitted from Chino Valley, Prescott Valley, Dewey, Cordes Junction, Wickenburg, Cave Creek, and many other communities to the north and west of Phoenix. Now, they were to the north and west of Phoenix at 8:15 Mountain Time, which confirms this idea that they were coming from the northwest towards the southeast, and they're traveling from top left to lower bottom, which, you know, definitely makes the possibility of a Las Vegas entanglement with these sightings a strong possibility based on the direction that they were coming from relative to Arizona. Witnesses were reporting such markedly different objects and events that night that it was difficult for investigators to understand what was taking place. And see, that's where we have a little bit of I'm going to just go ahead and say that that's a paper tiger. Mm-hmm. If a whole bunch of people are reporting different things, why can't it just be explained that they all saw different things? In other words, what is so difficult to understand about the fact that they saw different things and that perhaps multiple things took place at the same time? And this form of, I like to call it tampered reporting, is all over all of the official news reporting for the Phoenix Lights. Anytime two people contradict each other or even complement each other but have varying details, it's hard to understand. Why are they seeing different things? Because that's like, there's no basis in reality for that kind of journalism.
Right.
All right. Some witnesses reported 5 lights, others 7 or even more. Some reported that the lights were distinctly orange or red, whereas others reported distinctly white lights. Now, do you remember that thing from about 7 or 8, maybe 9 years ago, where that image of the dress came out on the internet? And there was this big debate between people about whether it was silver and white versus like blue and something. And there was like, it was like this 50-50 thing about, it was right on the borderline.
Yeah, they had the same thing with like a pair of shoes and like the color of the shoes.
Yeah. And it was remarkable how there was no gray area. Nobody said, oh, yeah, I could see it both ways. Totally. I mean, it was like either one or the other. Mm-hmm. And it was all based on seeing it on these screens, which is a whole nother layer to it. But so the fact that some people saw the lights in one color and other people saw the lights in another color or in another hue,
right?
That doesn't even need to enter the narrative. It's not like a source of real controversy.
No. And who's to say that they didn't change colors?
That's a fair point, too. Yeah, absolutely. You're so fourth dimensional. Many reported the lights were moving across the sky at high speed, whereas others reported they moved at a slow, angular velocity, and that they even hovered motionless for several minutes. And actually, those are the most intriguing testimonies to me, is to hear the people talk about the thing being just overhead, 100 yards, 200 yards over their homes, blocking out the starscape with just the orbs hovering above, and that everybody was at peace with it. And they were like, okay. And that when the objects moved on to the south, many of these eyewitness reporters said that they wanted to follow them.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't sound like the action of a threatening.
I didn't have time to dive into the subject, but I did come across something that was very strange, that 4 men actually, the day that this happened or the night that this happened in the area, were missing, and they've never been found.
That is interesting. So the day of, 4 men went missing from the Phoenix Lights zone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't have time. That would be like a whole...
That's a whole episode.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, brother, why'd you have to do that? I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight now, Jazmine.
No, but isn't that a great teaser for another episode?
Oh, man. Episode 63, Trouble in Paradise. The 4 missing Phoenix Lightsmen. But most of the testimony that I've read about the Phoenix Lights has been non-fear-based. The only fear-based stuff is like the dismissive stuff in the media, because there's this pattern of reporting where how many reports about this kind of thing end with, "We may never know," and then it goes to a commercial, or "The mystery remains unsolved." Or "I guess it's up to you to decide." That's like this like lazy, inconclusive journalism. There's no like intent to follow up. Now, when there's a murder case, we will be there at court tomorrow morning. We will follow up. We'll pursue this case until it's all. But this kind of like paranormal stuff, there's just like the media just treats it like it's a joke. Even though there's a mass preponderance of evidence, videotaped evidence and photograph evidence that, hey man, something crazy real happened here. Well,
Well, you're diving into a whole different kind of area with, I believe we talked about, I can't remember the gentleman's name now, the men that stare at goats. We talked about that, there's
Roger Lear.
No.
Robert Lear.
No.
Igalo Bay.
No. Will you stop?
I'm trying to help.
No.
But the one they made the film about to pretty much disparage his...
They made him sound like he was crazy at the end and everything, but he was very much into psychic warfare, studying extraterrestrials, and all that kind of stuff.
But wasn't he also like a government asset during his career too?
Well, that's when all of the studies took place. They were trying to actually train soldiers to
psychically attack other. Yes.
Right, and they were studying people like myself.
People with gifts, people they couldn't explain. They wanted to know why.
Right.
Can you grab the wheel and steer back to our main subject?
Yep. Let's move on to a great video that you've got pulled up there. I found that was really, really interesting.
It's about a witness to the lights, right?
Yes.
An aircraft piloting witness to the lights.
Yes. So it's actually, Kurt Russell came out and admitted that he was a pilot that night flying into Arizona, and we've got a little clip of that.
All right, let's listen.
Going into Phoenix, and I think it was Sky Harbor, and there's these bank of lights, 6 lights, in the shape of a triangle going back right over the airport. And I'm looking at them as I'm coming in. I'm, on the horn talking to them. I'm coming in, and I'm not saying anything about it because I'm kind of confused by it. But I can't tell if this is going to be an issue or not with landing. And Oliver said, "Hey, Pa, what are those lights?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they are." And so anyway, I called up the tower and I said, "What are you guys painting tonight over the airport?" And they said, we're not showing anything. What are you seeing? I said, well, there's 6 lights in a row. And they said, do you want to report this? And I said, look, I can't identify it. It's flying and it's 6 objects. So that's what it is, right? So we landed. I dropped him off, flew home. Years later, I come home and Goldie's watching this show on UFOs. And the most reported one of all time was this one in Phoenix. And I'm watching, I start to see this show and I said, wait a minute. That's the night Ollie and I were landing in Phoenix. I remember that. And I said, wait a minute, I've got it in my logbook. So I went to my logbook and I didn't mention anything about the reporting the UFO, but my flight was logged. So I said, yeah, and on the show they talked about 20,000 people reporting it and only one general aviation pilot. And I said, that's me.
So Kurt Russell, in a moment of candorous humor, here's the thing. Here's my takeaway from this. He tries to say that he forgot about the experience. I don't know if I buy that. Like, he tries to say that he had forgotten, and now years later there's this documentary about it, and he's like, oh yeah, that was... Like, he was already outed at this point. So why...
Well, he did report it to the ATC whenever it happened.
Yeah.
And
they confirmed that they saw it too.
Yeah, and that's something that I also wanted to talk about, was that multiple reports to air traffic control showed that people were, like, that the controllers were actually seeing the lights, but they weren't showing up on radar. And that was the case. I don't know if you've got the one screen grab from the response from the United States Air Force available.
Yeah, I do. This is the one in which they claim...
Yeah. Okay. So, yep. On the evening of the 13th March 97, our command post and other base agencies received telephone calls about the lights that many saw in the sky over Arizona. In the days that followed, our public affairs office also handled calls about the same subject. When queried by staff of the Strange Universe television program, our public affairs people acknowledged that callers reported seeing lights in the sky, but our staff did not state that the cause of the did not state that the cause was aerial flares. In fact, we don't know where the question of aerial flares comes from. There have been a number of accounts of the 13th of March of 97 incident that alleged Air Force involvement, and we have made every effort to ensure that callers understood that we were not involved in the incident. However, despite our best efforts to the contrary, we have been accused of withholding and covering up.
So there's actually a testimony from an airman that worked on the base. Mm-hmm. Have you heard about this one? Who says that he was instructed to tell reporters that they were conducting a warthog flare operation as an official explanation for the lights in the night sky. And so now this comes around then months later, throwing that guy under the bus, and he actually said that the last thing that he communicated to the outside world before he was never heard from again is that he was being transferred to an assignment in Greenland.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting, because there were two distinct events that were reported. The triangular shape formation and the lights that passed over the state. And the second was a secondary group of lights that the United States Air Force claims now, and that's where things change, because the
so-called flares, right? The warthog flares.
Right. So the Air Force then claims that they were flares dropped by an A-10 Warthog on a training exercise from Barry Goldwater Range in southwest Arizona.
Those must be some really advanced flares if they can stay in a tight formation for hours.
Well, the pictures and the evidence that people were showing, there was definitely smoke that could be seen around the flares. There's obviously no smoke that was seen in the lights.
Yeah. The actual flares do have smoke because they're like magnesium, like hyper bright.
Right.
It's like they're like fireworks, except like non-explosive. They just burn for a long time and make a lot of light.
Yeah.
So we're going to compare on the screen cap here. This is Dr. Lynn Kitai's photograph of the phenomenon from about 6 years after the original event, where she has photographed a triangular formation. Now, this is in 2003. So my thought here is if the Air Force's official, unofficial, controversial explanation here was that this was a formation of perfectly synced flares, how in the hell did they keep them in the sky until 2003, 6 years after the original event, and not address the event that happened in 2003, which is photographed here? And for the benefit of those listening on our audio podcast, we're looking at a photo of 3 orbs in the sky, very, very similar to the original Phoenix lights, but in 2003. So I think it's fair to say that whatever came from the local Air Force base was probably damage control, or at least bullshit.
Well, I believe that it was. I believe they did set off flares, personally.
Maybe as a head fake.
Right, after the actual incident, because
apparently they also scrambled fighters.
Well, because the craft was in a Class B airspace.
Meaning it was a completely restricted airspace.
Exactly.
And it was too low to be operating a craft that large, like above a major city. Like it's completely illegal for a terrestrial pilot to do such a thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have a witness craft that people are calling in to law enforcement and reporting seeing these lights and everything, you've already scrambled fighter jets and everything. It's in restricted airspace. Why not head fake and say we were running a training exercise?
Well, but then it was later retracted. Like the quote that you just brought up says the Air Force is officially on the record now saying that no, we never said that. We never did that.
And we never witnessed anything. It's only these callers that are calling in.
Yeah,
so they're essentially
only these tens of thousands of witnesses.
Yeah, they're essentially then making it like this mass hysteria event and saying, that whatever they saw was, bullshit.
Well, let's just see how many different video angles were captured by amateur videographers on the evening of March 13th, 1997. I'm going to pull up the video here on our live stream on YouTube because there's many angles to it. And some of the lights started out very, very low. This video angle that we're looking at now is actually from up in the mountains. And you can see that the lights are beginning to appear, 100, maybe 150 yards above, perhaps 200 yards above the skyline of the city?
I would say that they're higher than that.
Well, let's say it's a half a mile. That's still remarkably close. And you can clearly see how far apart the lights are relative to the size of the city. If this is one craft that is linked together by all of these orbs, it may be miles in size. I mean, it's huge.
Right.
And the fact that they're lighting up in formation, and then there's the tail light, which a lot of people witnessed. If that's all connected, I mean, that's
massive.
That is massive, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and these sightings, as we had discussed prior to starting the show, these sightings of these mass aircrafts are this isn't just like a thing that was limited to the Phoenix Lights. Now, it's kind of like what they refer to as they discuss them. But Dr. Lin Katai had actually met with a Chinese physicist that had also said they had an event that happened in China over one of the cities.
Mm-hmm.
You said that there was another one where?
Yeah, St. Petersburg, Russia. And I believe the St. Petersburg one was a month or two before the Phoenix Lights. And do you know when the Chinese one happened?
I'm not sure.
But
when she did her.
The St. Petersburg had all the same telltale characteristics: the formation of the lights, the appearance of a tail light. There's this thing called breakaway orbs. Like there was all these similar things that happened in St. Petersburg that were very, very similar to what happened in Phoenix. Is that the case with the Chinese one as well?
Yep. Almost the exact same report. So these were like events that were happening at various times, like worldwide.
All within a few months of each other, too, right?
But then, well, not even within a few months. I mean, Dr. Katai, her first photographs that she started taking were in 1995, and then the one that you had previously brought up was in 2003. So she's like continued.
Well, she's got at least an 8-year span of these photos that she's posted online.
Right. So, it's like this continuing phenomena that keeps on occurring.
And it's interesting, too, because you watch if you look at her first photos versus her last photos, you can see the technological progression. They're getting better at being able to photograph things after dark, which has been the bane of every photographer's existence since the get-go. But I'm going to continue with this video of the various camera angles of the lights. So this one, it appears that all of the lights turned on, and then a few of them turned off. This is from a vantage point of the mountain range that I believe is south of Phoenix.
Yeah.
And the tail has now turned off.
Yeah, but those that are listening, we have a horizontal line of 5 lights that lit up in progression and then have continued to stay lit in a formation that is not moving.
And yeah, absolutely stationary. And now they're beginning to go out. The tail light went out first, and now the other lights or orbs seem to be flickering. There's now 4 of them on the screen. And there's 1. They've all kind of gone out in succession. This is actually a pretty good video. This had to have been done on VHS, which...
Oh, yeah, you can tell by the way that the hand, whoever's holding, there's no tripod or anything like that being used.
So now here's another one. This is from a different vantage point. This one appears to be closer to inside the city because it appears that this is now underneath the formation, or more directly underneath the object itself. And there is now this is a third vantage point, which I'm not sure where this one is from, but this has all of the lights lit. And now there's a fourth vantage point where there's 2 lights visible.
The third one is actually from the same vantage point as the previous one that we were discussing.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, I see. They're doing some
that particular
image manipulation.
Well, no, it's not manipulation. That particular mountain range, the one video that we have upcoming discusses that range, and Dr. Katai also discusses that mountain range as kind of a landmark for a lot of this.
Well, apparently, also the native tribes in the area have a much greater and longer understanding of this kind of activity than, I guess, the white folk. I I don't know how else to put it, but
the Poe people.
There we go. Tell us.
I'm sorry. I had to.
So a second group of witnesses, a mother and 4 daughters near the intersection of Indian School Road and 7th Avenue, were shocked to witness an object shaped somewhat like a sergeant's stripes approach from over Camelback Mountain to the north. They reported that it stopped directly above them, where it hovered for an estimated 5 minutes. They described how it filled 30 to 40 degrees of sky and how it exhibited a faint glow along its trailing edge. The witnesses felt they could see individual features on the ventral surface of the object, and they were certain that they were looking at a very large, solid object. Now, this differs a little bit from the video evidence because all you see in the really, really highly compressed, low darkness floor video is these lights. And all you can really make out in the city skyline is a blur of lights, too. The object began moving slowly to the south. Again, you've got that southern movement, at which time it appeared to fire a white beam of light at the ground. At about the same time, the 7 lights on the object's leading edge suddenly dimmed and disappeared from the witness's sight. The object moved off in the general direction of Sky Harbor International Airport. It's too bad they don't actually just say to the north or to the whatever.
Mm-hmm. Sky Harbor, that airport in Phoenix is, a pretty known landmark. So,
a few miles to the south, where it was witnessed by 2 air traffic controllers in the airport tower and reported by several pilots, both on the ground and on final approach from the east. After this point in the sighting, the facts are somewhat less clear to investigators. It is known that at least one object continued generally to the south and southeast, passing over the communities of Scottsdale, Glendale, and Gilbert. One of the witnesses in Scottsdale, a former airline pilot with 13,000 hours of flight time, reported seeing the object execute a distinct turn as it approached his position on the ground. He noted that he witnessed many lights on the object as it approached him, but that the number of lights appeared to diminish as it got closer to overhead. Many other witnesses in these communities reported seeing the object pass overhead as it made its way towards the mountains to the south of Phoenix. Other sightings occurred shortly afterward from along Interstate 10 in the vicinity of Casa Grande. One family of 5 who were driving from Tucson to Phoenix reported that the object that passed over their station wagon was so large that they could see one, quote, wingtip of the object out one side of their car and the other, quote, wingtip out the other side. They estimated they were driving toward Phoenix at approximately 80 miles per hour because that's legal. And they remained underneath the object for between 1 and 2 minutes as it moved in the opposite direction. So if you're going 80 miles an hour and you're under this thing for 1 to 2 minutes, that's, I think what they're trying to impute there is that this is a pretty big object.
Right.
Many witnesses located throughout the Phoenix Basin allegedly continued to witness objects in peculiar clusters of lights for several hours following the initial sightings. So I was listening to the K-Town podcast earlier today, and they were talking about people who continued to witness this thing until like 8 or 9 the next morning.
Really?
Yeah, like just this. And when I say this thing, it probably means that there's more than one thing going on. Others reported peculiar orange fireballs which appeared to hover in the sky even hours after the initial sightings, including standalone orbs. So what I'm going to pull up on the screen now is the most common, what would appear to be the most common report of what they saw. This is from a VHS videotape dubbed off of a VHS tape, and this is one of the most high quality ground-based shots from the city of the actual object. And there seems to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 distinct sources of light in the formation. This is one of the images referenced by Dr. Lynn Ketai, although it's unclear whether or not she took the actual photo. But if this is the same one that was photographed from the South Mountain Range, then this would have to be at least a mile from end to end. Just based on the visibility of that vantage point.
Well, I was just trying to calculate the approximated size of the craft versus the 80 miles an hour that they were driving and the length of time and everything to see if that correlated and everything. And
where's Jazmine? You just like try to do some math stuff?
Thanks.
Oh, I mean, send your math equations to Jazmine Star 239. Thank you. So the main thing here is that this is a big sighting of multiple big objects, but definitely at least one really, really well documented big object. All right, now let's go back to the Air Force Base for a second, because one of the more intriguing reports was submitted by a young man who claimed to be an airman in the Air Force, stationed at Luke Air Force Base, located to the west of Phoenix in Litchfield Park. He telephoned the National UFO Reporting Center at 3:20 a.m. on Friday. Now, this is well after the initial reports came in. He telephoned the National UFO Reporting Center at 3:20 a.m. and reported that 2 F-15s had been scrambled from Luke and had intercepted one of the objects. This is at 3:20. So this is hours and hours after the mass sighting.
Right.
Although the presence of F-15s could never be confirmed, the airmen provided detailed information which proved to be highly accurate based on what investigators would reconstruct from witnesses over subsequent weeks. 2 days after his first telephone call, the airman called to report that he had just been informed by his commander that he was being transferred to an assignment in Greenland. He has not been heard from again. So this is courtesy of the National UFO Reporting Center, which I don't know if they knew his identity or not. Why would they lie about that? Because there's a whole lot of inconclusives on the National UFO Reporting Center.
Yeah.
This stands out as completely different from what they usually say.
Did you read that already?
We mentioned it earlier because I was planning a bookmark to come back to it later on.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, if not, I just had some major deja vu.
No, that was from about...
It must have been from the math.
About 40 minutes ago, yeah.
It must have been from the math.
Math-induced deja vu.
Apparently so.
I feel like I've been subtracting before. Or adding. So... What do you think, Jazmine Star? I mean, this is one of the most well documented.
So I saw an actual military video with IR cameras, and I'd have to go back and look at the actual time if it meets like that 3:20 a.m. Time frame. But it was really interesting because you could see two distinct crafts. Now, they were both triangular in shape.
Okay.
And were much larger than the F-15s that were scrambling.
Okay.
So, yeah, I wish I had grabbed that for the people that were viewing. But it was pretty interesting.
That's like the biggest tease of all time. I mean, I saw this video, but I didn't actually grab it for you.
Just like the 4 missing men.
Well, here's the thing. You're going to get kicked off YouTube if you share that video. This is just divine providence going on, because if we play that video, we get kicked off YouTube.
Right. I'm saving.
You're saving the best for last.
I mean, like we said, we could do literally like a whole series on this.
You want to know what I think the most like devastating part of this whole story is? It's the way it was handled by the public officials involved.
Yeah, well, when in terms of devastation, yes.
I mean, just like the human sadness aspect of it. It's like these people had a chance to blow the lid off of something really incredible.
Right.
And most of them actually decided to behave like politicians and be controlled by more powerful politicians.
Right. What does that sound like? Anything today?
I mean, we're in the twilight zone right now. In the twilight zone.
So
It took about 12 to 15.
All right, so I'm actually going to pull up a video of a city council member who dared to controvert the official narrative on the subject and demand that the issue be investigated. And I will have her name in just a second.
Right.
So we're going to go back to screen cap.
Yep. No, they actually they did. They filed for under FOIA to release the information on this case.
And FOIA is that delicious diet flavored carbonated beverage, right? FOIA.
Absolutely.
Refreshing FOIA.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't want to get kicked again.
Why? Is that a trigger? Is that a trigger word?
I don't know what the trigger words are. Like trying to figure out what these assholes that run all these social networks are doing.
Right.
Is
well, I mean, we've already mentioned Lear and everybody.
Bigelow Bay?
Robert Bigelow.
Oh, here we go. BigTechWatchdog.com before this gets banned. BigTechWatchdog.com.
Former Pentagon employee Robert Bigelow.
All right.
Financier for
billionaire.
Yeah.
Billionaire.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, millionaire.
Financed.
Wait, what?
1985 to 2004.
What? Okay.
Okay, let's go on.
By the way, this is satire for the sake of the censors. Hey, it's satire.
Yeah. Speculation and conjecture.
And satire. It's humor. It's humor. This is humor.
Yeah, apparently.
You know, there's nothing like more hurtful to these lefty fucking assholes than to be made fun of because they have the power. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, it just inflames them. Okay, so what we're going to see here on this video is a city council member in Phoenix in the months following the sighting trying to get something done about it and her recollection of what happened.
We were lucky to have an airline pilot mark us where he saw it.
It's coming up.
Councilwoman Barwood, you've been trying to get an official investigation going. What sort of resistance have you met, and why is it important to you to have an official investigation?
Well, I was approached by a TV crew one day, and I had assumed that this event was already being investigated, and I was told that nobody would touch it. So I then asked the city if we could look into it, and after that, I've probably gotten beaten up pretty good, but one of the things that's puzzling to me is obviously this, whatever it was seen by so many thousands of people. My office has been absolutely overwhelmed with phone calls, and myself at home, from people that are very reputable and professional people, lawyers, doctors, pilots, retired military, active military, and they all say the same thing. This was the biggest thing that they had ever seen, ever. The retired pilots told me that there is no way that this object, as big as it was, flying as slow as it was, could have stayed in the air. And they all said the same thing, and I had calls all the way from by Prescott all the way to Tucson and through the valley, and just unbelievable amount of people. There was absolutely no sound, and it was moving very slow, and it was not at a very high elevation, between 1,000 and 5,000 feet elevation.
Councilwoman, real quickly, what happens next?
Well, I sent a letter to Senator McCain and asked him to have the Air Force investigate. Excuse me. He then sent it to the head of the Armed Forces, who then apparently sent it to what's called the Bluebird Archives, and I guess from there they threw it out. So I don't know at this point. I'm going to be getting with some other people and, find out, okay, where do we go from here? Because it just seems really odd. I think at the very least, it's a public safety issue, whatever this was, passed over the most dense areas of our city. And, I don't understand why nobody's concerned just about that.
All right, Councilwoman Barr.
So her appeal was to John McCain. Like, that's where we were at back in the 90s. Like, no wonder this went nowhere. And this is the guy that lost Let's see, who did he lose to? Primary. That's the one they ran McCain against Obama in 2000, right? In 2008. And he was like a manipulated figurehead from the get-go. Like, I don't think that guy would have ever had any interest in trying to crack this case. And he was revered. McCain was revered by Republicans and neocons.
Right.
So what do you think about her experience? So Bartlow, I believe is her name. She seems kind of like a little bit standoffish about it, kind of a little bit political about it.
Well, I think she's been, at this point, she said that she had, what was it? There was a key phrase that stuck out to me that she said that essentially...
That she got beat up?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that stuck out to me as well.
Yeah, and that's when I'm like, okay, controlled opposition. So
yeah, okay, all right. So maybe like she was a little bit of a puppet for this event. I wanted to talk about, but I got beat up. In other words, she got a check from somebody, and then they said, make sure you say you got beat up.
STFU.
Yes, yeah, it could be. It could very well be.
Yeah.
So, so that was kind of like the immediate local political fallout from it. But there was something much, much worse that happened, and it was embarrassingly bad.
With the governor, yeah.
Yes. What do you know about Fife Symington, the former governor of Arizona?
He witnessed this event himself. He then decides that he is going to essentially make fun of the witnesses, and then due to their getting essentially pissed off because he's making fun of hundreds to thousands of people who have witnessed this event. And he's made fun of the event on his whatever he was reporting on CNN.
We had a press conference. So after USA Today finally just ran this story 3 months after the fact,
right,
there was a lot of political pressure on him because people had been inundating his office with, hey, what the hell happened? What do you know about this? Let's figure this out. You're an elected official.
Mm-hmm.
We're appealing to you to put political pressure on the powers that be to find out what happened.
Right.
And his response was a press conference insulting everybody that was involved with the mass sighting.
Now, he, according to what I saw, which contradicts what some of the information that you came across, he did quickly retract from the information that I got, his statement within like a week or so of this press conference because of the heat that he got from the people.
Well, let's take a look at Fife Symington's press conference about 3 months after the stuff went down with the mass sighting. And it goes a little something like this.
And he went to humorous and controversial lengths not to stir the pot. He held a news conference after the Phoenix Lights to announce the mystery had been solved.
And now I'll ask Officer Stein and his colleagues to escort the accused into the room so that we may all look upon the guilty party. Don't get him too close to me, please.
In the alien costume, the governor's chief of staff.
Now, this just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious.
UFO enthusiasts were not amused, especially since the governor was believed to have seen nothing. But now he's coming out.
The lights were really brilliant, and it was just fascinating. It was enormous. It just felt otherworldly. You know, in your gut, you could just tell it was otherworldly.
Symington will be talking about this in an updated film about UFOs called Out of the Blue. He has also talked with an organization that wants UFO information more out in the open.
It's very significant that someone of the stature of a governor would come out and say that they acknowledge that they experienced a UFO, because it brings a lot of credibility and strength to the case.
Governor Symington says he did tell his family, friends, and staff about what he saw early on.
I still, behind the scenes, tried to investigate it, but I got nowhere.
So what were the Phoenix Lights? Well, frankly, we don't know. What we do know is that it's as much of a mystery today as it was a decade ago.
Okay, and that is the tagline they always leave these stories with. Always.
Now, pull up his later interview. And obviously, whenever you see this, he's much older in this upcoming interview here. But his story is going to be quite different.
This event called Lights Over Phoenix. What did you see?
Well, I saw a huge craft just kind of come right over Squaw Peak. That was, it was just breathtaking. And I'm not sure about the date. You've got a better memory for the dates than I do. Yeah.
But there was no, like the Clinton day, no.
No. No, I was on a strict diet. No, I'm serious now. That it was unquestionably it was a UFO, which means unidentified flying object.
Doesn't mean we're being visited.
Well, it's nothing like anything I've ever seen.
And you're an Air Force guy.
Yeah, and a pilot. Got a lot of hours flying. So
it's
it
insecure.
was pretty breathtaking. And I'll never forget, I snuck out to see it, without DPS, which I'm not supposed to be driving my own car and that kind of thing. And so, but I told Ann what I was doing. I was going to go up to Squaw Peak and see what everybody was, clamoring about. And when I walked in the front door, she looked at me, and I was apparently normally I'm fair-complected and pale anyway, right? And she said, "Oh my gosh," she said, "she looked like a ghost. What did you see?" And I said, "Well, I don't know what I saw, but it was really something, and I'm not going to talk about it." And
so did it frighten you?
No, I think I was kind of in awe, really,
How big?
Bigger than anything I've ever seen in the sky.
Like an aircraft carrier in the sky?
Yeah. Something like that, And it was hard to define because of the light in terms of the size, but it was absolutely silent and had sort of eerie embedded lights, and, so that's what I saw. And I wasn't expecting to see anything because I was looking out over at Luke to the west. And then all of a sudden, these people in the park area just on the west side of 51, there were a bunch of people there. Everybody said, "Oh, look at that." And we turned around, and this thing was coming from the northwest, traveling to the southeast.
We now know, and it really hit me when we were watching the Diamondbacks in Game 7, and the B-1 flew over the pot.
It wasn't a B-1 bomber.
But that thing all of a sudden out of nowhere appears. And I said to somebody that night, I said, well, when they do test these, they test them in populated areas. They're new stuff. They test it to see if people detect it. Do you believe it was ours? Do you believe it was something from the U.S. government that they were kind of flying around?
No, it wasn't even close to a B-1. It was much bigger than a B-1. A B-1 actually isn't that big.
Right.
I mean, if it's at low altitude, it'll appear big, but no, this was totally different.
Something, though, that you think our own government may have been kind of running by a populated area to see what would happen?
Well, they certainly achieved their goal of stirring the pot, if that's what they were doing. But I don't think so. I think this was technologically far advanced. I use the analogy. Can you imagine if you took Christopher Columbus and put him in the cockpit of a Boeing 777? What his reaction would be? He wouldn't understand it. He would be convinced that this is something from another world,
Is that what?
And I believe that. I believe that. But I've always been open to that. We're not alone in the universe.
I agree with you.
We're going to find that out one way or the other. Even Bill Clinton was talking about that the other day on the national news.
I saw that.
Yeah.
So what are your impressions on that?
I think it's his honest approach on it now that he's no longer in office. I think he's also using it as a means to...
Like now that he's no longer a rock star, he can actually just sort of he can identify with his own humanity and
right.
kind of talk about things the way he actually saw them.
Right. I do feel like he could have used this as a profiting experience too.
Oh yeah, come back to relevance. I've been out of office for 10 years now. Let me come
Yeah.
back to relevance.
I will say, however, though, watching his body language, there are certain deviations that your eyes make whenever you are recalling information, versus like if somebody were being deceptive. So if he were making something up, the eyes deviate in a certain direction versus if somebody's like recalling information. If you watch his mannerisms and everything in this video, he is having moments of recall of the event that are quite apparent.
Instead of like attempting to deceive the reporter.
Right.
Have you done that same kind of analysis on the reporter? Because the reporter is like straight play acting the skeptic the entire time.
Yeah.
I mean, like full blown, like backing off the camera, eyes wide open, like kind of like skeptic, over the top hyperbole kind of reporting, which is so normal whenever these mainstream outlets cover these stories.
Yeah.
So I kind of don't care for Governor Symington's initial.
No,
I feel like he was greatly manipulated.
I think he totally mishandled the initial with his report on CNN. Like I said, we had differing information, but it's my understanding he quickly retracted that. And then it's quite compelling then his interview years later, wherever he comes out and speaks of his experience. And then just watching his mannerisms and everything like that, and eye movements, that he is actually using recall memory.
So of all the reporting that we've just kind of gone through and enumerated, eyewitness reporting, confirmed eyewitness reporting, reputable research organization reporting, mainstream reporting, governmental reporting, governor's office reporting, CNN reporting. This is all from 2007, 2008 and earlier, except for some of the Kitai stuff. Like,
right.
What do you think that the media is reporting now about the Phoenix Lights, if you had to guess? And I'll even say, go back 5 years, 6 years. What do you think that they've been reporting ex post facto about this incident? Like, what do you think their angle is?
With the media?
Yeah.
I think they totally want to discredit anything like that.
Well, I just happen to have a report.
Until we actually had someone in office that wanted...
Oh, here we go. Jazmine Starr's about to go there.
Someone in office that wanted these reports to come out. And once these reports came out, then holy smokes, we all of a sudden have...
Well, these reports have been out for a long time.
Well, they have, but they've been... they're highly confidential.
Well, they're obfuscated as hell. Like the number of reports that have been scrubbed and buried online by the search engines it's innumerable.
But
literally 10,000 or more people saw this together, and there's only a couple hundred. Like, if you really, really track them down, there's only a couple hundred reports online. This was in the internet age. 1997 was during the internet age. I mean, 20% of Americans had like legit access to the internet in 1997, and yet the best they can do on something that was reported by tens of thousands of people is only have a few hundred eyewitness reports at this point.
Well, I mean, even the military, having had a long-standing source with somebody that for over 10 years.
You're the mistress of the segue.
Well, my long-standing source of somebody for 10 years that worked as in military intelligence. This stuff was highly, highly classified. And even with his rank, in his E standing, he was not privy to that information.
Oh, yeah. Well, the military is run the same way the secret societies are.
It was right there in front of him. And, it was like his little butterfingers. He wanted to go into those files and look. And his superiors are like, nope, need to know. And you don't need to know. So
I have had similar treatment from a former United States Air Force officer who worked in NORAD on an official assignment, who basically told me to fuck off when I tried to press him for information after a years-long friendship. So I understand the greatness with which their control is exercised.
Yeah.
Now, this is a modern article relative to the story. This is from 2014, which would be about, 16 or 17 years after the so-called incident. Mm-hmm. On March 13th, this is from the Phoenix New Times. On March 13th of every year, local news outlets run the annual story of the, quote, mystery surrounding the lights that appeared over Phoenix in 1997. Understand, this is propaganda. Mm-hmm. The second paragraph says, people seem to forget or simply ignore there's no real mystery about it. People seem to forget or simply ignore there's no real mystery about it. What sane journalist writes this shit? This is pure propaganda.
Right.
All right. The non-mystery was...
Somebody that doesn't care about their future career and just graduated from college is who wrote this.
Let's see how many typos we can find in here, right? Get the editor fired, too. All right. The non-mystery was explained at length in a 1998 New Times story by Tony Ortega. What follows is the Cliff Notes explanation. There were two events that night, a V pattern of lights that flew across the state north to south, which crossed Phoenix around 8:30 p.m., and a second set of 9 lights that seemed to hover over Phoenix before apparently disappearing. Now, let's stop. That paragraph really isn't fair because it doesn't name the time frame of the second event.
Exactly.
And also it neglects the exact time frame of the first report, which was actually 8:15 Mountain Time, not 8:30. As for the first event, a man in Scottsdale looking through a large Dobsonian telescope identified the lights as being attached to planes. This is also pure bullshit because this has never been released photographically. And they also, so the guy's name is Mitchell Stanley. It says under magnification, Stanley could clearly see that each light split into pairs. On each of the tips of squarish wings, even though the telescope's power, the planes appeared small, indicated that they were flying high. Stanley says he followed the planes for about a minute, then turned his telescope to more interesting subjects. So there's so many fallacies in this argument. Not only are they talking about individual aircraft under individual control, which disagrees with all of the videographic evidence regarding the light formations, but he's also trying to say that it was so uninspiring to him that he decided to turn his telescope to more interesting objects, despite the fact that literally dozens of amateur videographers were absolutely captivated by this. Now, how are dozens of videographers going to be so captivated by this that they can't turn away, and yet the one source quoted by the debunking article says that a guy with a telescope identified them as airplanes in tandem and then turned away? Okay. Airplanes, here's a little dirty secret about airplanes.
They make noise.
And they don't hover. Okay, an F-35 can hover, but have you ever heard it do it? It's deafening. I mean, it's louder than anything you ever heard. So with the benefit of hindsight, you can understand how Mitch Stanley's report here is bullshit.
Right.
All right, the more widely seen and talked about lights were the ones hovering around 10 p.m. Okay, so now they're identifying the second event. Understand there were as many as 4 to 6 separate events, but the mainstream media only goes as far as identifying 2 of them.
Correct.
Tucson Weekly broke the news that the Maryland Air National Guard in Arizona for winning training had a squad of A-10 Warthog fighters over the gunnery range that night and had dropped flares, which was later denied by the Air Force Base.
That's correct.
So if Ortega's report is to be believed, and then queried to the actual Air Force source or to the actual Air Force witness on record, and they deny it, then how can this possibly be validated?
Right.
This report is horseshit.
Well, and the time frame, as you said, once again, is completely off because it was after 10:30 whenever they supposedly dropped these flares.
Now, here's another really, really big smoking gun. The disappearance of the lights, as we saw in the video earlier, it says the disappearance was actually the lights dropping behind the Sierra Estrella mountain range. Except the lights don't disappear from the same side of the formation in order. They disappear in opposing corresponding order.
Right.
So you've got a light disappearing from one end, then a light disappearing from the other, a light disappearing from the opposite end.
It's communication.
It is. And then finally, the tail light, which goes out, I think, before the last three lights extinguish. If this were one giant craft, how in the world could the tail of this thing had still been visible while the entire front end of it was almost gone with a mountain range that didn't exist on the closer side of the observer? In other words, there's no possible way that it could have extinguished in the order that it did. But they have an ASU astronomy professor
Ooh.
and a physicist and, quote, other scientists have reviewed the evidence and found the explanation perfectly plausible. In fact, you can still find the physicist's complete report online. Let's take a look at that. Oh, look at this. Except it's not online.
Yep.
All right. It's a 404. Now, as for the V, which wasn't talked about or disputed as much as the hovering lights, it never was disclosed who was flying those planes. Okay, so they're continuing with the story.
Right.
Once they've established the
it was
official
never
narrative,
disclosed who was flying the planes.
It was planes.
Okay.
It was planes.
What about the ATC saying that
there
was
no radar
absolutely
signature.
nothing on the radar?
Yep. And the multiple pilots who did not identify them as planes.
Exactly.
Yes, they identified them as lights.
Yes.
Yes, which I'm not a pilot, and I know that if you're in a cockpit, you can tell the difference between a light and a plane. Luke Air Force radar operator said there was nothing unusual on the radar, and, quote, a formation of 5 planes traveling at high altitude above sky harbors and outside of Luke's restricted airspaces would not have been considered unusual, except it wasn't 5.
No,
it was
up
9.
To 9.
At
I was
one
going to
point.
say up to 9.
So this Phoenix New Times, like if you can go ahead and just give this article a dislike right now, we would sure appreciate it. The efforts to debunk the story by the mainstream are laughable in this case. Absolutely laughable.
Right.
So hello to everybody that's on the live chat.
Yeah.
PF3.
You got it.
It is Stacy, tarot reader. Thank you. Thanks for checking in. Please follow us on Twitter at Tipcast239.
Yep. I agree. It is scary thinking that, that information is also being suppressed from us.
What if you're the kid that actually has to write the story and you're like, well, wait a minute, boss. Wait a minute, boss. This isn't actually the truth. Mm-hmm. And the boss tells you to write it anyway. Like, how does that change your soul a little bit if you run with it? Or do you quit your job on the spot? I mean, that's, especially for a young kid that's only making like 25 or 30 grand, like, and wants so desperately to be independent from their family.
Well, they're going to do what they're told. Anybody that gets into any of these positions of power, whenever it comes to the MSM, they're not.
Come on, just go ahead.
What? Just let it fly.
Just let it fly. We've got like 2 minutes to go. We're already a half an hour over.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's in a position of power with the MSM and everything now,
they know what the game is.
Oh, they're completely corrupt, and they're part of the whole problem, the whole process.
What about
right
social
now.
media too, though? Do you think that the kids that run these massive software algorithms that collect all of our data, including what we're doing right now, and all the
Meta.
comments in the live chats. I mean, it's so, these people have a tremendous amount of power. And if you take it back 15, 20, 30 years, it was just slower information gathering. But they did the same thing.
Well, yes. Sadly, what we're seeing right now is this whole paradigm shift, and as people are kind of waking up to what's going on, it's we're in a lot of trouble right now.
We are, but a lot of people are waking up. So PF3. Is Sandra D the name of the dog or the friend? We got to know. It's a Grease callback, right? Sandra D. Sandy. Mm-hmm. Sandy. So yeah, let us know the name of. Is this your girlfriend, or is this your girlfriend's dog? Yes. Okay. So Tarot Reader says that there's about to be a lot coming up in the skies.
Absolutely, and I agree with her.
Get your iPhones out. Be ready. Do you think this is why they've been engineering the software to make it more difficult to shoot things in the dark? Have you noticed that on the iPhone camera software? Like they've taken away all the manual controls for the flash and the exposure and the live and everything that.
Here's my advice for that. You download the app called Night Eyes, and then you can take beautiful photos in IR. I've used
simulated IR, yeah.
Yeah, I've used it for paranormal investigation and everything, and it works very well.
Night Eyes. There's also actual IR equipment that you can get out there that's available on eBay.
Yeah.
And telescopic IR too.
Right. But I mean, if you want something simple on your phone and everything, you can download this app and actually be able to see some of the stuff in IR.
PF3 says the friend's name is Salty. And the dog's name is Sandy. Yeah. Sandra D. Hey, what's the nickname going to be for the dog, PF3? That's what we need to know. And is Salty upset about something? Like that's what we say down here in Florida. If you're upset about something, you get accused of being salty, right?
Yeah, I'm a little salty.
A little salty.
Yeah.
I'm a little mustardy.
Ew.
Jazmine hates mustard.
Yeah.
For whatever it's worth.
Yeah, but definitely I think Tarot Reader's right, spot on. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be eyes on the sky.
Can you not feel it? Like the energy that is on our planet, like the way everybody's focused right now, the amount of just... It's never been like this before that I can feel, and I'm new to my perceptions of spiritual energy.
Right.
I've been in the church my whole life. I've been a Christ believer my whole life, but there's this new resonance that I'm experiencing the last few years. Like, can you feel like it's different, right?
Well, for me, absolutely. Because I'm very sensitive to the vibrational shifts. But there's some very low vibrational energies right now, and there's some very high vibrational energies right now. The more that we can attach ourselves to those high vibrational energies, the better off that we're going to be, because those low vibrational energies, and it's no good. We're in a...
Is it safe to say that it's good versus evil?
Yeah, we're in a state of spiritual warfare. And it's
been going on for a while, right? We just documented people lying about something that should have been well explored and well understood.
It is well explored and well understood. It's just being suppressed.
Okay.
Right. And anytime those light sequences and everything, I can look at that and I can tell you right now that that's communication, that the way those lights are being extinguishing in themselves. It's there are no coincidences. There's a reason why things happen the way that they do. And we're in a state of this awakening process. So we need to be aware of these sort of things, these energies, these lights in the sky, because it is extremely, extremely important right now.
Yeah, no coincidences. It's all relevant. It's all important. Jazmine Starr, how do people get a hold of you if they would like to talk about these energies and these not coincidences?
If they want to get a hold of me, you can find me at Jazmine Starr. That's it with the Z, Jazmine, STARR239.
Okay, pretty much everything is wrong with the spelling.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, double R's on Twitter. If you go under Starlight Readings on Instagram, you can find me on there. Obviously, I do readings as well, so you can reach out to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And NaplesPsychic.com, I think if people aren't on social media, if you have a friend or family member who is looking to interpolate some psychic information, some spiritual information, NaplesPsychic.com is where you can reach Jazmine Starr. And I can be reached at NigelKent239 on Twitter. At Tipcast239 on Twitter is for our show. And, of course, Trouble at Trouble239.com. Jazmine Starr is going to do a final sign-off on the live chat. Thank you for everybody who joined us tonight.
Yes.
Don't forget to subscribe on our audio versions. In case you miss a show, you can listen in your car or whenever you're driving around. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Stitcher, we're on all the major podcatchers. And, of course, I also have the Big Tech Watchdog podcast, bigtechwatchdog.com, where we talk about censorship versus free speech. Mm-hmm. It's just a higher layer of good versus evil. And for Nigel Kent, Jazmine Starr, Shiloh the Space Dog, Hash Brown the Bike Dog, and everybody else here at our top secret southern headquarters, stay out of trouble.